Thank you so much for joining me today. Welcome, Bronwyn, to the first of hopefully many conversations around cultivating care in our lives. And what does that look like? But before we start going into that, talking about it, I wanted to give you the opportunity to kind of introduce yourself. Like, who are you? What are you making in the world? What's something, if you want to
Yes.
call attention to anything you're doing to folks who might be listening?
Hello, my name's Bronwyn. I am a queer, non binary, polyamorous person who's originally from Australia, if you can tell from my accent. But I have lived the past 20 years in the UK, and I'm currently in Mexico, giving that a little try at the moment as well. I create a blog and video podcast called Minka Guides, and it's all about exploring what it's like to live outside the norm. So, as I said, it's all those things that I mentioned beforehand about being queer in terms of sexuality and gender, polyamorous and non-monogamy, and all things like that, as well as lots of other things around personal development and ways that we can, which kind of relates to what you're doing, take care of ourselves, grow ourselves, understand ourselves in ways that we're not necessarily taught how to do by society. So yeah.
Yeah, I love that you're really focusing on this wasn't necessarily how this was modeled for me, but how does
Mm-hmm.
this work for me and how can I be a model of that for other people
Mm.
and share that. So a question that I want to pose to many people and kind of open this with is, what does care mean to you? Like, whether that's in the context of, the different things you like to talk about and explore, or just the idea of care in general. Like, when you hear that term, like care, like what comes up for you?
Mm.
What does that mean?
It's a very interesting moment to be being asked that question because for me, care is something that I'm exploring a lot at the moment here in my 43rd year on this planet. Finally coming to understand what care looked like for me as a child, and then also how care has been something that I have struggled to both give and receive throughout my adult life, and especially very recently understanding what that caring for myself um, looks like and means. And yeah, it is really interesting because for me it really relates to in a lot of ways. So, for example, you use the word soft and softy a lot in the work that you
Yeah.
do, and I think I remember when we met 18 months ago and I started following you. That word was like really like ooh for me personally
Yeah.
because I come from uh, a family that's very like salt of the earth, working class, regional Australian kind of people, tough as nails, and softness and care aren't things that are necessarily seen as positive things. They're almost like, in a sense, a bit of a weakness, you know?
Yeah.
And so you using the word softy, or say my therapist recently encouraging me to get a teddy bear so that I could have some kind of like that kind of softness and give myself self-care by having cuddles with that really brings up so much feelings for me because it feels like something from that I have grown up feeling like those kind of things are weak things.
Yeah.
Um, and so going on this journey of understanding how to be gentle and caring to myself and with other people, and has yeah, it's a really powerful thing and something that I'm really kind of just only starting to feel my way into.
What do you or do you think there was something that kind of precipitated a transition there for you between how you were raised in this sort of feeling of no, softness is weakness, like no, I don't need or want care, to really realizing that's something you wanted and needed to explore for yourself?
Yeah, I think the key thing that has uh, facilitated that coming into my life is that my body would scream at me with anxiety all the time because I wasn't showing it softness and care. And I had no understanding why this was happening, why my body would have these reactions quite a lot all the time in very, very strong ways.
Yeah.
And it's taken me years of kind of like uh, exploring this for myself and then also with professional help to understand that it's my body being like, oh, you're not listening to me, you're not showing me care, you're not tuned into what you're feeling, you're trying to be really tough and strong all the time.
Yeah.
And because of that, my body has needed to basically yell at me to show it care. And so what that's what I'm doing at the moment is trying to understand how to really tune into myself and care for myself. And that's not always easy when you've got like, coping mechanisms that you've had for 30, 40 years of how
Yeah.
to avoid caring for yourself. Yeah.
Yeah. Are there any practices in particular that you're currently leaning into to try to help develop that sort of attention to your body and like paying attention to what you need and showing yourself care, as you said?
Yeah. So, there's a couple of things that I'm doing, all recommended by my therapist. The first one being 3 times a day, sitting down and trying to sit with myself and being like, what do I want and need right now? That is not about the schedule that I have set for myself in terms of what I should be doing or what I should be
Yeah.
achieving or
Yeah.
all of that. And learning to like really listen to myself. And allow myself to, yeah, kind of open up to that and then really follow through on that. So, say, even if my body's like, even if I've got, say, a Spanish class, in half an hour, but my body is just like, no, what you need right now is to lie down and chill out and maybe just do something really gentle with yourself, like play some gentle music in the background and just soothe yourself. And then maybe that means not doing that Spanish class. And, for me, feeling responsible and doing everything as it should be done is something that I'm accustomed to doing. And that's why I kind of aren't in touch with how I'm feeling. So that's one thing I'm doing. Another thing is uh, spending time 3 times a day, like holding my teddy bear and doing breathing exercises to try and help regulate my nervous system. And that also helps me to tune into how I'm feeling and understand what I'm wanting and needing. So very simple practices like that are some of
Yeah.
the things that I'm doing at the moment to just try and get to a base level of understanding what I want and need and being able
Yeah.
to show myself that care.
I love that. I feel like for me, it's always been hard to sit down and just like ask myself, like, body, what do you need? I mean, now I think maybe it's
Mm.
getting a little bit easier just with time being a human in the world. But I feel
Yes.
like I've always journaling really helps me because it's that like externalization. I was actually just reading like a blog post you wrote about the benefits of journaling, and I was like, yes, like all of this.
Yes,
Because for me, getting
exactly.
it out loud, like even if it's just to
Hmm.
myself in my little room, but like writing it down helps me see the pattern in a way that if I'm just sitting there looking in my own head, I can
Yes,
lose it, you know?
exactly, exactly. And meditation and journaling are another example of ways of showing yourself care that I, in the past, saw as like indulgent. Um, and and again, indulgent being a sign of weakness, whereas
Yeah.
they are really incredible ways of giving yourself just a small amount of space and time to really sit with and identify how you're feeling, and then also to just like sit and tune into your body. And I think that's why I wrote is that blog about the benefits, the science backed benefits, because I think there's
Yeah.
still a part of me that wants to really know that this is something real and that you can do for yourself, that like scientists have been like, yes, this shows has benefits, rather than being something that perception of it being self-indulgent and a bit out there and
Yeah.
ethereal and not really a real thing that you can do for yourself. Whereas yeah, it's interesting how knowing that professionals have actually seen and researched and understood those benefits actually helps me to be able to accept that care for myself.
Yeah. Do you do meditation as well? Is that like a practice you've
Yes.
explored, or does that still feel like not your vibe, too self-indulgent?
I think they both came around the same time for me, and not
Yeah.
surprisingly during the pandemic
Yeah.
when
Yeah.
um, uh, I was just like there, full of all of these feelings and like not really sure where to put them, and we were all going through so much at that time, and I had was living with someone who very much normalized meditation as a daily practice, and like being in that space in the house with her, seeing her do
Yeah.
that. Um, Help me kind of overcome that sense of this is something that weird people, self-indulgent people do, and
Yeah.
saw that that's a really lovely way that she showed care for herself. So then I was finally like, okay, one day, and I was just like there and be like, we're going to try this now, and like I opened up a diary that I had been using for work to like frantically every day write notes about meetings and all of this stuff, and so I had these blank pages that were not being filled anymore because I wasn't like in an office. And so then I just started writing my feelings down, and then followed that up by doing like 5-10 minutes of meditation through Insight Timer. And
Oh, yes.
I did that practice for about like daily for almost like 2-3 years straight. And it's only been in the last recently that I've kind of stopped doing that because I've been trying to, even though I see it as a good thing, what I've been trying to do recently is stop trying to do what my friend Renee describes as the it girl syndrome, where you're trying to do everything perfectly.
Yes.
I wake up and I meditate and I journal and I do my Spanish and I exercise and I do all of this kind of stuff. And
Yeah.
rather than like putting myself on that treadmill in the morning and trying to do all of that, I've been like, okay, when you wake up, we're going to do what feels right for you today. And
Yeah.
that's all we're going to do. And I know that that's still a tool that's there for me. And I used it yesterday when I was all up in my feelings about something that had triggered me. So it's still there. And I would like to feel my way back into making that a daily practice. But at the moment, I'm just letting myself like understand when I want and need to do it rather than thinking that I have to do it.
Yes, I love the way that you phrase that, like feeling, letting yourself feel the way into what you need and
Mm.
what your body needs in the moment. I think that's. I also get into that set of, oh, you should do these 500 things, which are obviously not possible.
Yes,
And I
exactly.
think, yeah, you just like learning to really let yourself focus. Cause I think for me, it's like, I still want to get certain things done in my life. I still want to learn Spanish. I still want to like improve the way that I'm caring for myself. And I know that developing this tool will help. But
Mm.
you can't do it all? So I feel like for me, I try to choose a focus. And like, for example, right now I'm doing like 3 things a day. These are the 3 things that I'm
Mm-hmm.
trying to focus on. And if anything else gets done or doesn't get done, that's fine. But right now we'll do
Yes.
these 3 things. And it's been
Mm-hmm.
working. Like one of them, I am journaling in Spanish to try to improve my Spanish. And like,
Wow.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's been amazing. And I've successfully done it 95% of the days of this month, I think. So.
Which is incredible. Yeah.
And other things like my meditation practice, also not something I'm doing daily right now. But as you said,
Mm-hmm.
it's like you've got to just kind of let it go a little bit. So you had said earlier that you were living, it was your roommate that you were living with that kind of brought meditation into your life and helped you sort of see that as a practice you could actually bring in for your own self-care practices. And like I was, I know you have strong community ties, and that's something you actively build and cultivate. And I would just love to hear a little bit more about how your community has been a part of how you show up in your own self-care and your own like shift towards
Mm.
how you think about care in your life.
It's really interesting because I the community like specifically that has enabled a lot of this stuff in the last 5 years of my life has been, in theory, the polyamorous non-monogamous community. But it's not just that is not that is something that has brought a lot of us together, but obviously that's not our only element of who we are. So
Yeah.
a lot of the people in that community are also queer. There's a lot of gender diverse people in there. There's a lot of people who are on self-care and healing journeys, exploring what it's like to be, say, a sex educator or a somatic healer or something like that. And through that, through surrounding my through finding that community and also helping to develop and grow that community even more. And I'm specifically talking about that community in London.
Yeah.
Um, it has been extraordinary for me because, hand in hand with a lot of uh, work that people do to understand how to have relationships that are outside the norm, also involves um, learning how to listen to yourself, to communicate well, to understand what you want and need that exists outside of the social script that you've been given,
Mm-hmm.
um, to be able to give love and show support to others as well as yourself. So it's had a huge impact on me, and there's so many things that I have gained through being part of that community, such as I said, having meditation and journaling normalized to me, having um, platonic physical touch normalized to me, which is someone who has struggled a lot with that over the years. I found that hugely beneficial, to the point that uh, even just within the last week, I attended my first cuddle puddle, which is like, for anyone who doesn't know what it is, it's like a
Oh
cuddle
no.
party where you. Are you okay?
Sorry, the audio went out
Can
for
you
a
hear
minute,
me?
but yes, now I can again. My apologies.
Yes, that's okay. No. It's fine. I'm sorry about my poor Wi-Fi here. But I can jump back in to what I was saying if you think that's good.
Yes, please.
Okay. So I say, even to the point that as of last week, I attended my first cuddle puddle, which is a like a party full of people who are exploring platonic touch. So cuddling, understanding how to ask for consent, how to say no, but also maybe suggest something else that you're open to. So like that, things like that have not that's kind of thing I wasn't expecting to gain from like joining a community that I thought was primarily about focused around relationships and sexual relationships and romantic relationships, but to actually understand how to grow connections with people outside of that, that's been incredible. And very much as well, like communication skills has been a huge one that's come from it all, and that's how to communicate not just with partners, but how to communicate with housemates and other members of the community and people that you are organizing things with and people that you're collaborating with, or your metamors, which is your partner's other partners, like all of this kind of stuff. Like it's uh, there's been an expansive growth that I have gained from the community, and has had a huge impact on the relationships I
Yeah.
have with others and with myself.
So you were talking about this amazing community. I love
It's
it.
like,
And how did you build this? How did that come together for you? I'm thinking, someone listening who's like, wow, cool, great, but I don't get invited to a cuddle puddle. Like how did you get started? How did you make this happen for yourself? Maybe just like a few concrete, actions that you took when you decided you wanted this to be
mm,
part of your life.
absolutely. It took me being very proactive, and it took me being proactive in a number of different ways. Firstly, was trying at a really core level to surround myself with people who are on a similar journey or exploring life in a similar way. So, for example, um, uh, looking for housemates who lived in a certain way, were also polyamorous and queer, basically. And that meant that I was surrounded at a really core base level in my life like that, and also looking for friends, and building that network around me. But I realized after a certain period of time, say about a year, or no, probably 2 years of doing this, that that was great, but I wasn't getting the broader community that I was looking for as well. And I knew that community was out there, and I was going to community events, but I wasn't finding the the level of engagement, the level of a sense of this being a community. So 2.5 years ago, when I met someone else who was very much like-minded about wanting to build more of a sense of community in London, um, I teamed up with her and I brought on board another friend, and the three of us launched a uh, like a non-monogamous social event in London called E&M Fam London, which was happens like originally every 6 weeks, now every 2 months. And we made it as inclusive as possible, in every respect that we could, in the way that we marketed it and everything. And they now, with these events, now get somewhere between 250 and 400 people to every event, in London. And that has made the sense of a visible community expand massively within that city. And then also off the back of it, lots of other community events have spun out of that as well. So that's been huge in terms of me being able to be like, I am part of a
Yeah.
identifiable physical community. It is here. Like, I know now hundreds of people like me from there. And then on top of that as well, has been, while I've been traveling, I've been seeking out community on my travels, trying to find people, connect with communities, whether that's through using Facebook groups or WhatsApp groups, or just researching, meeting people from queer community apps like Lex or dating apps like Field, and using that to then tap into the communities as I've been traveling. And yeah,
Yeah.
that's what's helped me to, say, find a cuddle puddle that I could go to, or it's helped me find, a drinks event or something like this, and continue to
Yeah.
keep building
What
community
I'm
as
curious
I
just to
have,
like
been a bit
go a
nomadic.
little deeper into what felt different to you about the community you were able to build with the ethically non-monogamous events versus the things that already existed that you said you were kind of doing before. Like what was
Yes.
missing that you then felt like you were able to create?
It's interesting because I think what was happening was I was hungry for community. So I was going along to these events, which were, usually say like a
Yeah.
drinks event with maybe 20 to 30 people attending. Um, and while it was nice, I never felt like I was really connecting at all. And I thought part of the reason for that was that there was always
Yeah.
kind of a bit of a, what you would say in the queer community, a
Yeah.
cruisy vibe, where people were cruising for other partners. Do you know what I mean? So their motive for being at these events was to
Yeah.
meet people that they would like to date or hook up with or something like
Yeah.
that. And for me, that didn't help to build that sense of community. So when we did create this event, we very much were just like, this is a community building event. This is for us to share experiences, resources, build community. This is not somewhere to come if you're looking for a new partner or someone to hook up with. And that's not to say through building community that people haven't met partners, but if by having that as the clear kind of prerogative of these events, that changed the energy, that changed the dynamic, and has helped a sustainable community to grow. And one of the biggest things I think the difference is that it meant that people who were already completely partnered up and were not interested in having
Yeah.
any new connections whatsoever felt comfortable coming along, and then therefore were able to share this wealth of experience that they have with the rest of the community, and were therefore able to help build that. And it meant that they we were bringing the whole diverse
I love
range of
that.
people
I
rather
think
than
that
people who
makes
were only
total
looking for
sense
new
in
lovers or
terms of like,
partners.
yeah, what are people seeking, and is the space actually providing, whatever that is. Um Yeah, wow. I
Yes.
so I think we've sort of talked about this in different ways, and I think maybe this came up a bit earlier, but I wanted to just bring it up directly. Like, I know that your journey towards your own like queerness and identity has been a part of your journey towards care and self-care and self-understanding. And I wonder, do you feel like your like queerness
Mm.
connects and relates to that idea of care, or how you want to show up and caring for yourself and caring for the people around you in the world? Like, how do those two things fit together in your self understanding?
So I think it's hard
Yeah.
for me to understand how it would feel different because I have always been queer and I have always gravitated towards queer people. So there's a part of me that can only appreciate that through looking at
Yeah.
what is normalized in media and other people around me as how they interact and all of that. But I always think that there's a huge blessing in whatever parts of you that don't fit into the norm, which no one fits completely into the norm. So, um, whatever those parts are actual gifts because they do help you to find small communities that can give you support and love and cherish you in different ways. And I very, very much feel that from my queerness. And one example I always say of this is uh, how meeting friends who are queer, and even if your friendship only exists in a way that doesn't go much beyond going out and having fun together, there is a sense of family that comes from that I don't think I see a lot of other friends bonding in that really like fast way if they're not queer. And I don't know if it's hard to explain that, but it uh, it has just brought so much a level of integration with friends into my life that I have found extraordinary in the love and support we show each other so quickly and so deeply. Um, and yeah, and I think in terms of like being able to be able to enhance the care that I show for myself, um, I think that people understand uh, very quickly like why I may be struggling with something and reinforcing to me that I am worthy of love and that I am worthy of desire and I am worthy of having whatever I want, whether it's like a long-standing relationship or a family or a queer platonic network around me or whatever those things are. They, even though I grew up, say, in the 80s and 90s, at a time when queerness was starting to emerge as uh, uh, a visible community and therefore a way of life that was seen as more acceptable, even though there was still rampant institutionalized homophobia and homophobia that you would
Yeah.
experience, in your daily life. Um, Having those people around me helped to reinforce that, yeah, all of those things, that it was possible for me to have the love in my life that I wanted and also to be able to give myself the love that I deserved, even though it's taken me a very long time to really kind
Yeah.
of absorb
I
that.
feel like with queer folks and in queer community, there's usually this sort of requisite intentionality around relationship and connection because your relationship is outside the norm, whatever that means. But like, like you said, it sort of forces you to be more
Yes.
intentional. And I
Yeah.
think that
Yep.
bleeds into a lot of the other ways that queer folks tend to relate. So I think I have intentional close friendships with people who aren't queer, but it's far less often. And I think generally speaking, you know, there's a lot of the
Mm.
tropes around queer communities are this deeply intentional chosen family vibes, which, I don't think are the tropes we get in heteronormative society.
Absolutely not. And that also extends to a lot of stuff that I see queer people having to be much more intentional about, such as if they want to have children, that's not just like getting drunk and
Yeah.
accidentally getting pregnant with your partner. Like that's probably months, if not years. But it's true. Like it's months, if not years, of thought and planning and understanding and working out how that is and how that's going to look, and if it involves just the two of them or more people, because there's
Yeah.
probably someone else who has to be a part of that or that process. So there's enormous intentionality behind that. There's enormous intentionality behind just even the way structuring their relationships, because for so long we couldn't get married and we couldn't, necessarily like have government sanctioned relationships in the way that heterosexual people did, or relationships that were between people who identified as men and women. Um, so it's because that wasn't there for so long, we don't fall into the default with our relationships so often, whether that's monogamy, whether that's marriage, whether that's anything like that. So there is just an enormous amount of like thought and care that goes into working out how to have that relationships. And that doesn't mean there aren't people who are cis straight monogamous who don't have intentionality behind how they have relationships. But uh, I think it's I think in a sense like there's
Yeah.
a lot of flow coming over from queer community and from the non-monogamous community that's helping to help people be a lot more
Yeah,
intentional about the way that they
absolutely. I
are
think
monogamous or
so.
straight
My
or
mom
whatever.
has been with the
So
same
yeah.
woman since I was two. And I think back to, when she had my sister and I with my dad, and it was just like whoops, we had a kid. Now we have two. Whereas with my little brother, who's 12 years younger than me, it was a years long process
Yep.
full of so many appointments, so much work, so much effort. Because it doesn't just happen, and all of the other little ways. I was just really feeling viscerally as you were speaking about that, some of these things where, yeah, through the 90s, you couldn't get married. Like my stepmom couldn't legally sign my school forms because that wasn't something you were allowed to do, you know?
Yep. Exactly. And another example is a friend of mine who grew up in the 90s in a polyamorous household where they grew up with their mother, their father, their mother's, excuse background noise, their mother, their father, their mother's other partner, their father's other partner, and their father's partner's
Yeah,
other
unheard of.
partner, all in the same house together, which in the 90s, is very different household dynamic, very queer, very like polyamorous. But because of the way that they grew up, they had extraordinary problems with people in the community calling social services and child support on them all the time. And so they had a very disrupted, childhood because of all of these things happening. Whereas hopefully now something like that wouldn't experience those kind of things, but there was such a like clear level
Yeah.
of intentionality about them, about how they wanted to live their life
Yeah.
and
So this
raise
thinking
children
about
and all of
how
that
things have
happening.
already
So
changed,
yeah.
in some ways leads me to kind of the last thing I wanted to bring up, which is like our hopes for the future. Like what do we envision as the next stage of bringing
Mm,
more care to our communities, and in whatever way this comes up for you, but just what does that future look like that we're hoping people see in the next generation or future
mm.
generations after that? How do you hope that care shows up at more as a default, or queerness shows up more as a default, or what do you envision when you think about in 50 years and 100 years, like this is my dream,
Yep.
not a reality, but just like as you're creatively daydreaming.
Interesting, because I am incredibly privileged enough to already be seeing the dreams that I would have wanted 25 years ago come true. And that is because I have a what we would say in English is a nibbling. I keep wanting to say Spanish words, but
Yeah.
sorry, what we would say, because sometimes it's easier.
Yeah.
Nibbling. So that's a non-binary niece or nephew. My eldest nibbling is transmasc, and they are 17 years old, and they are growing up in the town I grew up in and going to the high school I went to. And I am getting to see that 25 years of difference in how they are able to live their truth and embody all of that, and be able to be open, be able to come out to my
Yeah.
family in ways that I couldn't when I was 17 years old, in ways that they are able to choose their own name, their own pronouns, to be able to embody all of that kind of stuff, and be loved and accepted and cherished for it. And for me, like, I even if I want to think about future and how that could be bigger and better and stuff like that, just being able to even see that within my own lifetime and my own family happening is extraordinary, and it gives me such incredible hope for the future, um, and just incredible,
Yeah.
uh, just like, I'm like, wow, if this is happening with this generation, what about the one after that and the one after that? And I know that there's so many things that are so hard and difficult in our world
Yeah.
right now, but to be able to see the progress around all of that happening is incredible. So
Yeah, I
that's for
can hear
me. Sorry, there is Mexico City in the background
it.
making itself known. Someone thought it
Oh,
was a whining child or a cat when they were having a
they're
call
just
with
they're
me the other
selling
day. They were like,
something,
what is that noise? So,
right? Yeah,
yeah,
right,
they're basically driving a truck around asking if you have an old washing machine or a
right,
fridge or something like that. And like, if you do, they can take it and they'll
right.
probably go and fix it or sell it or whatever and stuff like that. So,
Yes.
but it's a very famous sound of Mexico City. I think it's going away now.
Yeah, it's mostly gone now, I think. I mean, I think that's beautiful. Like genuinely, I love that you've been able to experience that. And I think that it we can get so caught up in the things we still want to change, the things that still aren't great, that we do collectively and individually forget to celebrate the wins that we have had. I think you see this everywhere. You see it in organizations, in families, and you see it on this wider sort of
Absolutely.
social scale. So I really love that you brought the attention there and like, no, look, these amazing changes have happened, and we can celebrate that. So I really, really appreciate that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it's so beautiful to me, this whole process, because me not realizing that living my life as honestly and authentically as I could over the last, 25 years. And that means having gone through constant coming out processes in terms of queerness, in terms of gender, in terms of relationship style. I had no idea that when I was doing this, that I was actually making it easier for the next generation of my family to be able to live their life as well. And it makes me incredibly emotional to have been able to help my family kind of grow and expand in those ways to create a soft landing space for people coming up through the next generation, which is amazing. So yeah, I feel very incredibly honored to be all part of a small part of that
Yeah, that's
family's
a
our family's
fantastic
journey,
ripple
through all
effect,
of
I
that.
think,
So
to have
yeah,
had, and a helpful reminder for all of us that, even when we're caring for ourselves, we're
mm,
doing something for ourselves, it can very often spread, and be a ripple for other people. Um, and on that note, I want to just
mm,
kind of thank you. Like, I want to wrap this up and thank you for your time here and ask you if there's other things that you want to share about what you're working on, what you like to talk about, projects you have going on, so that people who want to continue to see what you're doing, feel your ripples in their lives, can take that with them and go
yeah.
explore.
Yeah, so as I mentioned at the start, I'm a writer and I'm a podcaster. I do a video podcast, and as I said, all of it is about exploring life outside the norm in all the ways that we've talked about over the last half an hour, 45 minutes. So, um, if you are interested at all in reading some of that work or viewing my video podcast or just engaging with the community that I talked about that I have created in London and potentially will be doing in other places, you can find me on my website is Minka Guide. So that's Minka, Minka, and then guides, as in to guide something. And that's minkaguides.com. And you can also find me with that name on YouTube and TikTok and Instagram. And please, if there's anything that you've heard me speak about and you'd be interested to know more about, please drop me a message on any of those platforms, and I would be very, very happy to connect you with whether it's community links or resources or information or some of the work that I've done, or also giving me ideas for other
Awesome. And
things
I
that I can
will
explore in the
plus
work that I
one
do.
that
I'm
Bronwyn
very,
is
very
super
open to that.
open and available and just a wonderful human being. So don't be afraid to reach out. Thank you so much for chatting today. I feel like I got to learn a lot
Thank
more
you so
about
much.
you, and also just about like thinking about different ways that care shows up and different ways that people think about it. So I really, really appreciate you taking the time and sharing today.
Oh, it was an honor. I'm very grateful to be part of this. And I'm grateful to you and all of the lovely work that you do and how the impact that it has had on me and my life and helping to make me not be scared of being soft. Very much so. Like, I genuinely feel that.